They're playing in L.A. tonight. Crypto.com, Lakers home to the Milwaukee Bucks. The story on the surface is Luka's not playing for the Lakers, but the real story actually may be in Milwaukee, as Chris Haynes reported yesterday that Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and head coach Doc Rivers had a meeting after their loss to Golden State earlier this week, and it was just those three. Doc called the meeting. And I'm a Bucks fan, and by no means am I trying to make this Bucks talk radio, Aaron, but you're someone who I know at one point came up with the acronym SOB, right? Same old Bucks. Remember that?
Did I come up with that?
Yeah, I don't know. I just
okay. Yeah, let's go ahead.
You used it. SOB, same old Bucks, and then they go and they win the NBA title, and all is forgiven. And now the question is it? Because now you're 4 years removed from winning an NBA title, and you aren't any closer than you were 3 years ago or 2 years ago. The point that I'm looking at with Milwaukee is you've changed absolutely everything. Mm-hmm. At what point does the responsibility fall on Giannis' shoulders?
Yeah, he's the only thing that hasn't changed. And it's funny because I noticed this, and I think, and I don't want to take away from your thought process, but I assume you bring this up because part of it is it does seem like he gets no blame. Is it because he's just seen as like a nice, gregarious, he's smiling and he's happy.
And he puts up 30 and 12.
Sure.
That's difficult to argue with, but not. And I also think that the targets around him have been easy targets. Like, it's easy to look at Doc Rivers and say, Doc Rivers is the problem. Look, Doc Rivers, look what he hasn't done anything since he won that title in Boston. It's easy to say Damian Lillard, look, same old Dame, right? Mm-hmm. Same old guy in Portland, can't win the big one. It's easy to point to Adrian Griffin. Like, Adrian Griffin. He was first-year coach, couldn't get it done, needed to move him out.
I know he won with Chris Middleton, but early on it was like, well, what do you expect? His number 2 is Chris Middleton.
Yes, and this is the point. And Giannis is now, and Colin Cowherd made the point of, like, are we starting to see the beginning of the end of Giannis? Maybe so. Like, the numbers wouldn't show it. I think that his body at some point is going to start to, if it hasn't already, which he's been unavailable in playoff series because of injuries, including last year when they got bounced by the Pacers. It's the point of everything has been built around him. Mm-hmm. And I think that your point of Giannis being the guy that everybody loves and the fresh-faced guy and the guy that keeps it real and doesn't have buddies throughout the league is all stuff that us fans can appreciate. But when the team hasn't been able to move forward while bending backwards to do everything that they can to keep him, then who ultimately is to blame? Is it to blame? Is Kyle Kuzma to blame that they bring him in? Kyle Kuzma gets shredded on Twitter every single night that the Bucks play. Maybe it was a bad trade that they made. I mentioned Doc Rivers. I mentioned Damian Lillard. I mentioned Adrian Griffin. But at some point, when we're talking about the superstars of the league, like Kevin Durant, who's getting flack for what they have or haven't done in Phoenix, at some point I think it's got to come down to Giannis. It's just darn near impossible when he's second in the league in scoring. But they've done everything for him, and it's not working. So maybe Giannis is the one that actually needs to change.
And I think he's been a little bit more vocal about things than I think. I think yes, he's good. But that's never stopped us from criticizing LeBron for wanting to be a GM, Kevin Durant for moving around, whatever. What I think it is I think he's maybe just a little bit more calculated with how he does stuff, where LeBron, whenever LeBron's leaking something to the media, you know darn well it's coming from LeBron or his camp. Oh, you know who I'm a real big fan of? Sam Presti. Oh, the Lakers need a new GM. It's like LeBron's really calculated. With Giannis, I think he's a little bit smarter about it. But I was telling Jay Stu before when you left is I go back to that New York Times interview that he did, and I looked it up to confirm. It was August of 23. He does a sit-down with the New York Times. He's got an extension coming up. And, he basically says, like, hey, if moves aren't made, I would have to consider not being here. And a month later, they trade for Dame Lillard. And so, I think if LeBron had done that, it would have been like, oh, here goes LeBron trying to leverage the media. Oh, Kevin Durant, another trade request. But because it was Giannis, for some reason, I don't know if it's just because he did it with a smile on his face or he just doesn't move the needle or people don't think that he's being malicious in the manner in which he's acting, even if he is. But I think that's part of it, is it just feels like people just don't assume that there's kind of this calculated kind of cutthroat part to him.
It's tough to criticize when the numbers are there, and it's tough to criticize his effort. And to your point, I think it's interesting. I think that John Horst, the GM, is bent over backwards to make every single move possible to try to make him happy. But then when it doesn't work out,
none of the blame.
Yeah, exactly. We blame everybody else. And I know it's difficult to blame 30-12.
Yeah.
But at some point, you have to figure out how to make this work. So it's up to Giannis. It's not up to Dame, and it's really not up to Doc Rivers. It's up to Giannis to figure out a way. All right, because this is his legacy, and his legacy may be just bringing the one title to Milwaukee, but it hasn't been good the last 4 years. And if it's trending like this, it's not going to end up well in these playoffs.
Yeah, I just think it's okay to be critical of a player that puts up those stats because, again, LeBron's literally the all-time. We criticize every public thing that he makes, KD the same, whatever. I just think that it's that, we assume, like I said, he's always smiling. We know the story. He came over. He didn't know anything about America. He ate his first ice cream cone, and it's like, so I think we still see him as that guy, not as the cutthroat guy that's pulling strings behind the scenes.